That'd be terrible.
Welcome to the Library Connection. I'm Tracy Thomas, Assistant Director at the V.B. Comer Library, and I'm your host today. And I just want to say, before we get started this morning and introduce our guest, I want you to know that at the library, the staff, the board, we're just so appreciative of TV 47, giving us the opportunity each week to showcase our library and our materials and our services and the people in our community that help us connect and carry out our mission, which is to provide services and materials for the people of the greater Sylacauga area. So a big thank you to TV 47. I think we've been doing Library Connection for about 16 years now, so it's just a great honor to get to do that each week and to get to meet with you each week through the TV. So today our community connection is Pastor Mike Owen, pastor at Sycamore Baptist Church, and I just want to thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You've been in Sylacauga how long now?
We have been here almost 5 years here in Sylacauga. We came here from Colorado. We were out there at a little mission church out in Colorado, and we have some family in the area, and so through those connections we kind of ended up here in Sylacauga.
Well, great. So tell us a little bit about your family, because I know that you've only been here 5 years, but You're deeply rooted in the community.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm married to Lori. My wife's name is Lori Richardson Owen, and we have 3 kids, Mason and Landon and Haven, and they're all here in the Sylacauga school system. Mason graduated last year, and he's at the University of Alabama now, and we love the community. It's been great here in Sylacauga. People have just opened up to us and welcomed us in, and we feel like we're home. We really do here in Sylacauga. So,
well, you have 2 other kids too.
I do. I have Landon and Haven. Both of those guys are in the school system here. Landon's in the 10th grade, and Haven is in the 5th grade at Pinecrest, and they love it here. They do. All of our kids have loved it here in Sylacauga.
They would get me if I didn't make sure that you mentioned
You're
them.
exactly right.
So, Mike, I've been reading some since I've gone back to work at the library. Of course, you know my story, and I was there for 15 years, and I left. I've taken about almost a 9-year break from the library, and so I've come back now, and I'm trying to refamiliarize myself with the library collection, and we have some great new nonfiction books at the library. And so I started reading this one called Fight for the Forgotten. And when I started reading this, it made me think about you, and that's why I thought you would be the perfect guest today to come on and just let me share just a minute or two with you about this book, and then we want to talk to you about your experience, which mirrors this so much. Mike has got a pretty rich history in Brazil. You started a few years ago going and doing mission work. And so when I picked this book up to read it, this man in this book was a UFC fighter. And he got involved with a mission trip to the Congo, and he just talks in this book about how his life was never the same again once he came home, and he knew that that's where his heart needed to be, was helping these people in these villages. And the story just mirrored so much what I've heard you talk about on Sundays. And I just wanted to have you talk a little bit about the mission work that you've done in Brazil and how many years you've been doing it.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. And that sounds like a great book. And I've been working in Brazil since about 2001. God actually put the people of Brazil on my heart long before I ever went. And I began to research about the culture in Brazil at our local library. So a lot of resources there to help you learn about the culture and the language and things like that. And in 2001, we had an opportunity to go for the first time into the northeastern part of Brazil. And we were working with partnering churches in America with churches in Brazil to help kind of reach out into their community and do social work and things like that. But ultimately, of course, we were after something greater than that. But it's been a wonderful experience, about 15 years of working there in that area and getting to know those people and building relationships with them, because their culture is all about relationships and like our community here, and so we have built relationships with them, worked with pastors and churches all over the northeastern part of Brazil, and it has been some of the best work I think that I've ever been a part of.
So when you would go on those mission trips, who would you take with you? How big would your group be? Did your family go?
Well, all of my family now have been able to go, except our youngest daughter haven, and she has asked since she's been 3 years old, when can she go? And she will as she gets a little older. But we take church members and people from our community to go. We've taken doctors and nurses, teachers, people that are able to provide some type of service, and that really draws the Brazilian people in when maybe there's a medical team there or somebody that can help them learn English. They're very interested in learning our language, and but mainly those who have a heart to reach out to those Brazilian people with the gospel as our ultimate goal. But we try to do that in all kinds of ways with all kinds of people. And we took a team from our church here in Sycamore this summer, and I think there were 11 of us in that team, and it was a fantastic trip.
Well, one of the things that I guess I was so interested in when you started talking about going to Brazil was, how do you connect with those people? And I know that you do speak some Portuguese.
A little bit.
But one of the things that I had to understand was that being able to speak Portuguese doesn't mean that you can be a translator. So talk a little bit just about the experience of using those translators while you're down there.
Right, and it is a different experience. Speaking English and a little Portuguese, but those guys, the guys that we meet there in Brazil, and we've met them over the past 15 years, and you just speak, a little bit of English, and then they translate it, and it's a process to learn how to do that. But I like the fact that even though you couldn't speak any Portuguese, you connected with those people in such a great way. And what we've learned through the years is that the language really is not a barrier to building relationships with those people. The love that you show them and they show you breaks down the language barrier in such a great way, and communication just really happens somehow. Even though you don't know the language, it really does happen, and so it's a great experience. I wish everybody could experience going to that culture, trying to figure out the language, speaking with translators, and all of those things. It's a wonderful experience.
When you are there, not being able to speak their language, that to me is just such a great equalizer.
Yeah.
Because you have to learn to get what you need any way you can. And so having the translators there is wonderful. And I was blessed enough to get to go last summer on the mission trip with the church. I think there were 11 of us. And it was just a wonderful experience for me. And I guess that's why reading this book just there were so many similarities, and it just hit home for me that it's pretty much a universal thing when you go to another country and try to connect with people. So it was just a really good story. We're going to talk some more when we come back after this break, Mike, about the mission trip that we went on this past summer and how it was just a little bit different than the trips you've been on in the past.
Sounds good.
Recycling, it's nothing new, but how many of us actually do it? What's the point? Every time you toss out something that could be recycled, you're throwing away money. Recyclables are valuable, and when items like these are recycled, they are sold to businesses and made into new products. Alabama's recycling industry employs thousands of people, and more recycling equals more jobs, which equals more money put back in your local economy. See, recycling just makes sense. Let us show you how recycling works in and for Alabama.
Hey y'all, Jim Green from TV47. You can now catch us on the internet. We're streaming live at TV47.tv. All of our great programming, whether it's Daybreak with Jimmy Dale, Matt Coulter, and Around the Track with Matt, or I'll be on with Coosa Valley Magazine, and a whole lot more too, right here at TV47, now TV47.tv on the internet. Whatever device, you can watch us right there at TV47.tv.
In Alabama, finding a place you and your family will love comes naturally at any one of our beautiful state parks, where you can stay and play. Alabama state parks provide opportunities for adventure on the water, in the woods, and even just hanging around. Whether you want to explore the foothills of the Appalachians or wade into the warm waters of the Gulf, Alabama is a natural delight. To learn more, call 800-ALAPARK or visit alapark.com.
Welcome back to the Library Connection. I'm Tracy Thomas, Assistant Director at B.B. Comer Library, and today we're joined by Pastor Mike Owen, and he is the pastor at Sycamore Baptist Church, happens to be my pastor, and so I just want to thank you so much for coming on today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Tracy.
We're talking about something today that I know is really dear to your heart. You've had a rich history of doing mission work in Brazil, and what we've talked about in our first segment was the fact that you've been going to Brazil since about 2001.
That's right. That's correct.
And the mission trip that we went on last summer, and I was just so blessed to get to go in June when the church went, it was a little bit different than the trips that you've taken in the past. And so I wanted you to kind of just do a comparison of what the other trips were like and how this trip was a little bit different.
Absolutely. It was different because over the last few years down in Brazil, we have heard stories about a group of people that were kind of out in the, what we would call the interior, maybe the jungle area. In the past, we've worked with churches and schools and hospitals and organizations like that there. But we heard about this group of people, and they were actually descendants of escaped slaves down in South America. And those slaves escaped out into the jungles, and they hid out and formed villages, and they just shut themselves off from the rest of the world. They're very guarded against outsiders and things like that because of their history. And it wasn't until like the mid-70s that these people were discovered. And so we heard that they were out there, and we had formed some relationships with another missionary in the area who had been working with these groups of people further north than we were. And so he has discovered that there were some of these groups, these villages in our area, and we were able to sort of make them the priority, kind of getting into those villages where people had never been before, at least outsiders like us with the gospel had never been to those areas before. And so that was the focus of our trip this time, going to a village that had never been approached by Americans, North Americans at least, before.
Well, one of the things that I loved about the mission trip was that we had a workshop at the church, and we came together and they gave us all a book. Mm-hmm. And they had actually taken Bible stories because, you know, being a children's librarian for many years, storytelling was just something that I loved. And they had taken the Bible stories, the essential Bible stories, and kind of pared those down into a storytelling format. And I know that we talked about they replaced some words that those people in those villages might not understand with words that they would understand.
That's right.
And we just kind of memorized those Bible stories, and when we got to go into the village, we had turns. We took turns doing our storytelling, and I just thought it was such a wonderful concept because, and I'm going to let you speak to that, but storytelling is part of their culture.
It is part of their culture. These folks, when they went out into the jungle area, they left civilization. They left any sort of school system that they had a chance to be a part of. And so these guys are, they're not able to read or write. They don't have books and things like that they share. And so their culture has been to tell stories to their children and their grandchildren, and that's how they pass down history, their history, family history, and lessons and stories from their past and how they started, and so this is their culture to tell stories, and that's how the children learn. Even today, they sit around and they have storytelling time, and in fact, we heard some great stories of people there, some of the older ladies who remember their grandmothers being in slavery. And so it was a wonderful opportunity, a great cultural experience to watch that happen, the storytelling time in front of us. It really was great.
It was a wonderful experience. And another thing that I was so pleased to be a part of was that a local church there helped identify needs that the villagers might have, and one was for clean water. Right. And I know that that's a big issue in a lot of other countries, and so we were able to actually take these water filters that are, you know, formed on a pottery wheel, that are native materials to these villages, And we were able to take them in and leave each house that wanted one with a water filter.
Absolutely.
And it's something that they wouldn't have to sustain like a church building or, a power bill or anything. You're not leaving them with an obligation.
Right.
It was something they could use, and it would improve their quality of life.
That's exactly right. And what they had discovered with the missionary we were working with is because of their natural fear of people from the outside, they weren't very open to these missionaries coming in. And the local pastor that you were talking about, the church that we worked with, who was from one of these villages. He grew up there and kind of made his way out and got an education. He said, let's try to bring into these villages these water filters because everybody needs clean water. And when they began to take water filters in, we take one for every home in the village, the doors just really opened up to us being there because we're providing something that they greatly need, which is clean water.
Absolutely. We're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we're going to actually see some pictures from the mission trip and talk about some more things.
Hey, Sylacauga! I'm Dr. Gina, and I want you to join me live every weeknight, Monday through Friday, right here on Channel 47 on the world's first social television show. And it's going to be all about you, whether it's presidential politics or Deflategate. If it's trending, we're going to be talking about it. I want you to join me live every Monday through Friday on Channel 47. Don't miss it. America Trends with Dr. Gina, Monday through Friday at 9 p.m. right here on Channel 47. See you then.
Becoming a driver can be an exciting time for a teen, but it can also be challenging. And at very worst, deadly. Alabama ranks 5th in the number of teens killed in motor vehicle crashes every year. It's the leading cause of death among 16 to 24-year-olds. Alabama's graduated driver license law places restrictions on young drivers to help ensure their safety. Parents, know the law, enforce the law, and be a good example. Remember, the life you save may be your child's.
Hey Birmingham, it's your favorite girlfriend, Ebony Steele, back in my hometown. My show, Coffee with America, is now on WOIL TV 47 4 days a week. Catch me and Sasha Rianda Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays at 8 a.m. You can also see us Saturdays at 10:30 a.m. We're bringing you the latest in lifestyle, food, entertainment, you name it. We'll see you soon.
Welcome back to the Library Connection. Today our guest is Pastor Mike Owen from Sycamore Baptist Church, and we've been talking today, Mike, about some mission work that you've done in Brazil for a lot of years. And last summer I was blessed to be able to go on the mission trip with the church, and we took water filters into these villages, and we also utilized storytelling to share Bible stories. And so it was just such a neat trip, and we wanted to share some pictures with you today, and we'll just talk about those pictures a little bit. This first picture is a picture looking out of our hotel window when we were still in what we kept calling the big city before we actually went out into the village. And when you look out, there's some sculptures, there's some beautiful things out in that water. And if we'll look at the next picture, if you looked down, straight down from your hotel window, this is what you saw. And it was just such a sharp contrast. In the city, we still had malls, we still had a Burger King in the mall, we still had places, to go eat. Right. But when we went out into the village, we saw a lot more poverty. And so that was, the picture there was just a pretty stark contrast.
It is. And it is a good illustration of life in Brazil. There are very wealthy people in Brazil, and then there are mainly people who live in poverty. There's not a middle class in Brazil. So you're either wealthy or you have nothing, and you can see examples of them living right next to each other, and they make it work somehow culturally, but there's a lot of extreme poverty in Brazil.
This is just another picture when we were actually in the town where we stayed at. That's a donkey pulling a little cart. It was just almost culture shock compared to how we live.
Right, absolutely. And a great example of kind of the new and the old, they're together. They just make it work somehow.
They make it work. And of course, this is a lady that we met in the village. Her name is Miss Lucy. And we just had the best time with her, and she's so proud, and rightfully so, of her goats and her farm animals. She actually, I thought, was doing pretty well because she had quite an array of farm animals and goats and cows, and she's promised if we come back next summer, she's going to kill one of her 3 pigs for us. So
true.
she's promised us a feast. And this is Lucy posing with her bird, and she raises these birds, and she catches them wild, and she raises them, and she sells them.
Part of her income. And you can notice from the background that she lives in a mud hut, and with thatched roofs and things like that. And that's the typical Brazilian home out in the interior. Not very much. They don't have a lot, but they are very proud of what they have, and they work very hard for what they have.
I had to throw this picture in. I know you weren't expecting this one,
I was not. That's
I just wanted to show this because Pastor Mike decided he wanted to hold the bird on his shoulder like Lucy did, and the bird was in need of a bathroom break, and it was funny to us, but it was almost horrifying to Lucy because they're such hospitable people, and they want to take care of you. And so she ran and grabbed a towel and immediately starts cleaning your shirt off. But I thought it was just such a sweet example of how they love people and how they try to take care of everybody.
They do. The Brazilian culture is so warm and loving, and once and this is one of the villages where these people, Lucy there is a descendant of slaves, and she remembers her grandmother being in slavery. But when they open up to you, you really are family, and they love you like your family. And as you've found out, you learn to love them like their family as well.
You do, and you miss them when you're gone. This is a picture. We had done a Bible story sharing time with the villagers, and we were sitting up under this thatched pavilion they had out in Miss Lucy's front yard. And after we shared with them, they kind of got together and huddled off to the side, and they came back out with a book, and it was a song book.
That's right.
And they wanted to do a song for us, and I just thought it was such a sweet gift that they wanted to give something back in any way that they could.
That's right. A wonderful time. You'll notice it's nighttime there. They work all day, and then they would come out at night to meet with us, and we were worried about being there too long, that they needed to go to sleep because they worked in the fields all day long. But the gentleman there in the white shirt asked us to stay all night, if you'll remember that. They would even build us a place to stay there so we could be with them all night. And you're right, probably the only book they had in the whole village was that song book. And we noticed how most of the people gathered around that book were not looking at it because they couldn't read, but they had memorized. Somebody had taught them that song like they did the stories, and they were singing from memory.
This is just a picture of Miss Lucy's backyard. This is where she hangs her wash. And like I said, compared to some of the homes that we saw there, she has quite a bit.
Yeah. They do their washing, their showering, their bathing, everything outside, and you talk about a culture shock. Their bathroom as well is outside, and it's a lot different than what we're accustomed to.
And this is just a shot of the whole village, and we were so pleased to get that picture of all of our new friends together. It's nice to look back and think about them.
Absolutely.
Until we can see them again.
In fact, the last thing they said to us before we left was, "When are you coming again?"
Coming again. And this is just another photo I threw in for perspective about the cultural difference. This is again in the big city before we went out. And you can see that looks really nice and pretty and clean, and in stark comparison to the village that's not all that far away.
Those streets are hundreds of years old too, isn't it? It's a beautiful area, very artsy downtown area, and beautiful. The architecture there is amazing.
So those are just some glimpses of what we experienced. But when I read through this book, I noticed so many similarities to things that we did. And one of the things that struck me was they noticed in this story an immediate need for water too, because it's such a universal need in so many other countries, something we take for granted when we turn our faucet on. And taking the water filters out, the only obligation that they have is to replace the filter about every 3 to 6 months.
That's right.
And the water filter itself is a charcoal filter that's relatively expensive, even in their terms.
That's right. But we saw we saw the great need that they have for these water filters. Literally, there were holes that they dug around their yard that they filled with rainwater that was contaminated with I imagine every type of bacteria in the area, and the kids are always sick. And you can see their tummies protruding because of the bacteria that they're intaking in the water, and so it's such a great need. Everybody needs clean water, and it was such a simple process to get them a filter. And they don't have to walk a long way now to get water. They literally can filter water overnight that will last them for the rest of the day. And it's a great opportunity.
It's a great project.
It is.
And another book that I wanted to share just briefly was, this book came in, it was called Water Princess. And I shared it with you one night at church, because this story is from a child's perspective of what it's like to want water and to need water and to not have access to it.
Absolutely.
And it just shows how this child can't even get a drink of water until they walk to the well, come back, the mother boils the water, and then they can drink.
Right, and that's a very typical scenario in places like Brazil and Africa and other areas where the children are usually responsible to get the water, which may be miles, several miles away, and they might make that trip several times a day to try to find some water to drink. And then when they do, the water is probably not clean, and it's probably full of bacteria and other things that make them sick. And just a simple water filter changes their whole lives.
It enhances their quality of life tremendously.
Yeah.
So when we first got there, you said we have to find a person of peace in this village.
That's true.
And that was one of the things they talked about in this book, was when you go in, you have to find that person of peace. And for us, it was Miss Lucy.
Absolutely.
And so you're going back. In a very few weeks, you're going back. And so will you go back and reconnect with Lucy again?
I will. In 2 weeks, we'll go back and we'll see Miss Lucy, and that'll be kind of our base area. And our goal on this trip is not only to kind of reconnect with those guys there and do some more Bible storytelling with them, but also to move into the next village and to prepare those guys for when we bring Tracy and all of our other group back to Brazil in the summer. Next summer, we'll have them ready and waiting for this group, and so we can't wait to get back. We'll develop those relationships more. We'll get the water filters ready and things like that for our upcoming trip, and just continue the process of telling those stories from the Bible that they, by the way, will tell with their friends and share. Before we left, we had an example of one of the guys who came in one night after we'd been there, and he was telling how he had passed those stories on to the guys he was working with the next day. So storytelling, it really does work.
It does. It's a wonderful means of sharing information, and one of the things that I learned from Brazil is it doesn't matter how loud you talk or how many hand motions you make. Sometimes you just have to have a translator.
That's exactly right.
We were blessed. We had some really good ones. And Mike, I wish you much success on this next trip.
Thanks,
it's a wonderful thing you're doing. I know you're taking one or two other people with you on this next trip. And look forward to hearing about all the good things that happen. And thank you so much for coming on today. And thank you so much for joining us too for the Library Connection.